Hi, my name is Richard Campbell, and I wrote my first line of code in 1977.
Ooh.
So, yeah. Now, admittedly, I was all of 10 years old, but I fell into it early. My father is an electrical engineer, and I used to build cash registers. So actually, my first programming was when I was about 8, programming cash registers. But I met the TRS-80 Model 1 at a Radio Shack back in 77, and that was a whole 4K RAM. And,
4K?
It was a bunch, but every byte counted. It was a version of BASIC not written by Microsoft. It was a tiny BASIC, and I only had 3 error messages: what, how, and sorry. So I guess that was the beginning. And I really, I've never done anything else. All my life I've been involved in computing in some capacity. Always was good with the electronics side, so sort of my first job was repairing stuff like the TRS-80 and things when I was about 12, working for a shop called H&S Microsystems back in the day. So, I grew up programming and building machines. And so as I became a professional, such as it is, I really am comfortable. I know how hardware works, and I've built a lot of software, and stuff's evolved over time. I've sort of been through a lot of it. And so I got into performance tuning. It's interesting work, and it helps to have a very broad view of infrastructure, like how all the things go together, so that you can hunt down bottlenecks. In the end, that's all making stuff go faster is find the slowest point and make that no longer a slow point, and it'll go a little bit faster, and you find the next slowest point, and you just keep going from there. The business is as much as you want to do, really. I was very popular in the dot-com boom. Back when we were trying to make websites go faster in like 97, 98, 99, that was it was
good years.
Very good business to be in. And I ended up working mostly for finance folks.
Okay.
So the VC types would contact me as a firefighter to come in and deal with, here's a site, it's being very popular. They always had good problems, right? Like a site was successful enough that so many people wanted to use it, it wasn't working well. Yeah. How do we make it go faster?
How do we scale?
Yeah, and you pretty quickly figure out that the only reason a guy like me gets brought in has less to do with the technology and more to do with the psychology. Like why is this team not able to figure out these problems and move forward? Rarely is it a skills issue. Mm-hmm. And over time, I think I sort of evolved into a marriage counselor. It's more about helping a team do a good job. Like, I'm only going to be here for a couple of weeks. We're going to figure some things out. And you guys are going to make it go fast after that. So how do we get there? What does that really look like?
So when did you start coming to DevTeach?
I think I was at one of the very first ones.
Ooh.
I can't even tell you what year that was. I started speaking at conferences in 96. Roughly, I've been writing for magazines and things like that, just sort of sharing my experiences. Mm-hmm. And, coming all the way to Montreal was a long way from Vancouver. And I went to a bunch of them. And, the thing about being a conference speaker is it's where we are right now. It's a speaker's lounge, right? Like the exciting part is getting a chance to hang around with the folks you've read and you've got their books and you've seen their sessions, and now you get to talk to them, you get to hang out with them. So that was really a driver of that. And of course, the almost apocryphal but true story is that Carl Franklin and I met at DevTeach in 2004.
And can you speak about your now relationship with Carl Franklin?
So I first knew of Carl Franklin long before he knew me. Carl had one of the very first websites for software developers ever. It was called Carl and Gary's Visual Basic Homepage. So this is, very early. This is even when GeoCities was a new fancy idea, right? And we were still getting AOL CDs, and I had a CompuServe account. Like, that's how you did email. And so this was an incredible resource, this site, for building Visual Basic apps. This is what we were doing. This is VB2, VB3, in those times in the early 90s. So in 2004, I'm talking about Visual Basic. It's still in its heyday at that point. That's not right. VB's over by 99, so it's the beginning of the .NET boom, really. And I mostly talked about performance tuning then, and most of the time that translated into making SQL Server go faster. So a lot of SQL sessions and things like that. Anyway, we're at the speaker's dinner. and telling stories as we do. And Carl had already started the podcast at this point, which, he made his first recordings of .NET Rocks in 2002, which is like 3 years before the word podcast even existed. I think he was maybe the third or fourth RSS feed with enclosures ever.
Wow.
It was really right at the very beginning. And for the first 50 shows, his co-host was a guy named Mark Dunn, a nice southern gentleman out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then after 50 shows, Mark's like, I'm busy. He ran a training company, he had a good business. And a new co-host came on board, a guy named Rory Blythe. So when I met Carl at DevTeach, he and I got along like a house on fire. Pretty much just one of those things. We're about the same age, 2 daughters. Like, it's just a lot of, we live fairly parallel lives. Although he's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, like far apart. So I was a guest on .NET Rocks during the Rory days, show number 69. And then Rory went to work for Microsoft. And he got so busy that by around show 100, it was just like, he can't do it anymore. And Carl asked me if I would come on as co-host at show 100. So, I'm the new guy, right? And I figured I'd do 50 shows, right? The first co-host did 50, Mark did 50, Rory did 50, but I'll do 50. It'll be fun. I was wrong. So, we're at 1320 now.
Wow.
So, it's been a few years, right? The show 100, which is when I officially became co-host, was February of 2005. So, we're just over, a little over 11 years now, working side by side on a lot of content.
So you've been to a lot of DevTeach. How have you seen it change and grow?
DevTeach has gone through a bunch of changes. So, it started out as just a Montreal show once a year kind of thing, and JR chose to move it around, to start taking it to Toronto. We brought it to Vancouver, and one year actually I hosted the speakers dinner at my house in Vancouver. But never a huge show. This is not a multi-thousand person show. This is an intimate show. 4 to 6 rooms, a few dozen speakers, always focused in sort of the Microsoft space, although you recognize that's a pretty big gambit of topics these days. So it's always been a strong data side, a strong web side, lots of conversation about core language. Of course, .NET is the dominant conversation now, but that's a very broad topic to deal with. And one of the appeals of a show like this, and I've been to conferences all over the world, if you actually wanted time with your favorite speaker, like you want a chance to really ask them questions, maybe have a coffee and talk for a while, you have a way better chance of that happening at a show like DevTeach than you'd ever have it happen in a Microsoft Build event or any of those massive conferences that are out there. So, it depends on the experience you want to have. There's something very powerful about a big show. It's a lot of drama, but it's you're part of a massive crowd. Some of the best experience I've ever had at conferences in the 20 plus years that I've been going to them have been at these smaller shows where you've had a chance to really talk to somebody, get to know them as a person, not just a book author or not just a guy who makes videos, just really get the chance to chat with them for a while, maybe have a drink and get some insight.
And pick your brain.
Yeah, what do you think about? One of the side effects of my experiences in the .com boom is I actually think an awful lot about the way new technology companies are created and grown. And so it's not something I ever talk about on the podcast. Most people aren't aware of it from me. But last night in the bar, I ended up sitting with a couple of guys that were here for the conference and have a startup company, and they're working on their funding. And I've done that a bunch. So we talked about it at length about, this is what that would look like, and here's how the advisors would work, and here's how you organize your options. And just, I've done it a few times, happy to share. Yeah. It's not a conference session I would ever write, but it's certainly something I'm happy to talk about.
And it's not something they would get at a massive...
I don't think you'd have an opportunity to talk to the same people. There's lots of ways to gather information. You decide how you like to learn. One of the things you'll like about being in a place like this is, everybody gets to meet everybody. This is a few hundred people all hanging out together, so it's very intimate. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you stopped by. And where can people listen to the show?
So .NET Rocks is at DOTNET ROCKS. I also do an IT-related podcast called Run As Radio, like it sounds. And other than that, I'm on Twitter. I'm Rich Campbell on Twitter.
All right, we'll check you out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.